The rain began sometime in the early afternoon, soft at first, like fingertips brushing against the roof tiles of the old house. It grew steadier, a gentle, constant murmur that wrapped the little dwelling like a thick wool shawl drawn close against the chill. Inside, the kitchen held its own quiet warmth. The single overhead lamp cast a circle of amber light across the worn pine table, and the wood stove in the corner gave off a low, steady heat that smelled faintly of cedar and yesterday's bread. She moved through the room in thick wool socks the color of oatmeal and a cardigan whose elbows had been carefully donned with pale gray thread. The kettle sat on the back burner, already warming, sending up the first thin threads of steam. She reached for the small tin on the highest shelf, the one with the dented lid and the faded painting of chamomile blossoms, and cradled it in both hands as though it were fragile porcelain instead of sturdy metal. When the lid came free, the scent drifted out immediately. Dried lemon balm, soft lavender heads, plump rose hips, a breath of peppermint that had settled into the tins, seems over many seasons. She worked without hurry. A measured poundful of chamomile, pale and moon-colored, a generous pinch of lemon balm leaves that still carried the ghost of summer sunlight. 3 rose hips, small and ruby wrinkled like forgotten autumn fruit. Each ingredient fell into the chipped blue teapot with a delicate patter, like raindrops landing on moss-covered stones. She paused after every addition, letting the fragrance rise and mingle, breathing it in slowly. While the kettle continued its patient warming, she turned to the bread box. Inside rested yesterday's loaf, still shrouded in a clean linen cloth that smelled faintly of yeast and linen water. She unfolded the cloth with care, revealing the round, golden crust that had softened overnight into something tender and comforting. The knife she chose was the old one, with a wooden handle worn smooth by decades of hands, her mother's, her grandmother's, now hers. She cut 2 thick slices, listening to the quiet, satisfying sound of the blade moving through the crumb. Butter waited in its little glass dish, pale gold and lightly flecked with sea salt. She spread it generously, watching it melt and sink into the warm bread, leaving a glossy sheen behind. The kettle began its soft song, not a shrill whistle, but a low, contented hum. She lifted it from the flame and poured the water in one long, steady stream over the waiting herbs. Steam rose in slow, fragrant spirals, carrying the clean sweetness of lemon and flowers across the room. She placed the lid on the teapot, turned it once clockwise the way her grandmother always had, as though the small ritual helped the flavors find harmony, and let it steep. She carried the teapot and 2 mugs to the table beside the window. The mugs were old friends, one cream-colored with tiny painted violets, the other deep forest green with a fine hairline crack near the handle that had been there for years. Both were still warm from the dish drainer. She set them down carefully and sat, letting her palms rest flat against the tabletop, feeling the familiar grain of the wood beneath her skin. Outside, the rain had found its full, steady voice. Water traced slow, wandering paths down the glass, meeting, parting, meeting again. Occasionally a single drop would gather weight and courage, sliding all the way to the sill before letting go with an almost inaudible tap. She poured tea for herself first. The liquid bloomed a gentle golden color in the cup. A few stray petals floated to the surface like tiny paper boats on a calm lake. She blew softly across the rim once, twice, then took the smallest sip. Warmth slid down her throat, settled somewhere deep behind her breastbone, and slowly unfurled like sunlight breaking through winter clouds. The back door opened with a familiar creak, letting in a brief gust of cool, wet air scented with pine needles and damp earth. He stepped inside, shaking rain from the wide brim of his old felt hat before hanging it on the wooden peg by the door. His coat glistened with hundreds of tiny silver droplets. He brushed them away with slow sweeps of his hands. The little gray dog followed close behind his damp, tail low and gentle, pausing just inside the threshold to shake herself vigorously, sending a fine mist across the floorboards. "There's tea," she said, her voice as soft as the rain outside. He smiled, the slow kind of smile that begins in the eyes and takes its time reaching the mouth. "Smells like summer remembered." She poured for him without asking. A little honey from the jar on the windowsill, stirred once, then left to dissolve in quiet swirls. He sat across from her, elbows resting on the table, cradling the warm mug as though it were the most important object in the world. The dog circled twice beneath the table, then curled into a tight, contented knot beside the stove, releasing one long, satisfied sigh. For a long while they said nothing. The rain spoke for them. The fire in the stove gave small, companionable pops. Steam rose in delicate curls from their cups. Eventually he reached for the bread. He tore a piece with his fingers rather than the knife, the way he always preferred, and the crust gave a soft, quiet crackle. He offered half to her. She accepted it, their fingertips brushing for the briefest, warmest moment. "I found the first snowdrops this morning," he said after a slow sip. "Under the old plum tree. Just two, but they're there, pushing through the wet leaves." She looked toward the window, though there was nothing to see but rain and fogged glass. She pictured them anyway, pale green spears, fragile white bells bowed beneath the weight of droplets. "They're early. They always are," he answered gently, "when the winter has been kind." She nodded. The idea of kindness in winter felt true, something quiet, stubborn, persistent, like the way the house held warmth even when the wind tried to slip through the cracks. After the second cup, she rose and moved back to the counter. There were apples in the shallow wooden bowls, small tart ones from the tree behind the woodshed. She chose 4, washed them under the cold tap, and began to peel them with the little paring knife. The peel came away in long, curling ribbons that fell onto the cutting board like pale rose petals. The scent of fresh apple rose sharp and clean, mingling with the lingering herbs and wood smoke. He watched her hands as she worked. She turned each apple slowly in her palm, letting the knife follow the gentle curve of the fruit. When they were peeled, she sliced them thinly, arranging the pieces in overlapping circles on a plain white plate. A light dusting of cinnamon, a few slow golden threads of honey from the jar. The honey caught the lamplight and gleamed. She brought the plate to the table. They ate in companionable silence, sharing the slices, occasionally offering each other the smallest, sweetest pieces without needing words. The dog lifted her head once, hopeful, dark eyes shining. She was rewarded with a single thin crescent of apple, which she accepted with grave politeness before resting her chin on her paws again. Outside, the rain had softened to a fine silver veil. The light in the kitchen had deepened to the color of old honey. Somewhere in the next room, the grandfather clock ticked its slow, even heartbeat. When the plate was empty, she gathered the peelings and carried them to the compost pail by the door. He rose too, taking the kettle to the sink to refill it. Together they moved through the small, familiar tasks, rinsing the mugs, wiping crumbs from the table, folding the linen cloth neatly over the remaining bread. Each motion felt like a quiet sentence in a conversation that had been going on, without hurry, for many years. Later, when the rain had hushed itself to almost nothing, they carried the last of the tea into the sitting room. The dog padded after them, nails clicking softly on the floorboards. He lit the small lamp beside the armchair. She tucked a faded quilt around her knees. He picked up the book he'd been reading, a worn paperback with yellowed pages, and opened it to the sprig of dried lavender that marked his place. She reached for her knitting basket, the soft gray wool already shaped into the beginning of a sleeve. The fire murmured low in the stove. The rain whispered against the roof. The needles moved in slow, even rhythm click. She paused every so often to look at the window, where the rain had left long, glistening trails that caught the lamplight like silver threads. Somewhere deep inside the house, in the place where memories settled like dust in sunbeams, the afternoon folded itself carefully, like freshly laundered linen, and rested. The kettle sang again, softer this time. He rose to pour fresh water over the same herbs. There was still enough life left in them for one more gentle pot. When he returned, he set the teapot between them, and they sat together in the deepening quiet, letting the warmth of the mugs, the scent of the tea, and the patient voice of the rain hold them both. Outside, the first early dark of winter evening began to gather, but inside the little house the light remained steady, golden, kind. The dog dreamed with small twitching paws. The knitting grew by tiny rows. The book turned one more page, and the rainy afternoon stretched on, soft and unhurried, carrying its small, perfect stillness into the evening, into the night, into the gentle memory of every day that had ever been lived this quietly, this warmly, this completely at home.